prepare the hall. I would hand over to the program director for the evening, Professor Gift Baloyi. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, before we start with the program, I need to, on behalf of the institution, apologize for starting this event this very late. There were quite a number of unforeseen circumstances that prevented us from starting on time. So we really apologize for that, and we kindly appreciate your patience sitting and waiting for this very moment so that we can start. I am now going to request all of us to put our phones on silent mode so that they don't disturb the proceeding of the evening. And I request that should nature call, when you walk out of the Senate Hall, on your left-hand side, you will see the signs that there are restrooms where we can run into. Without any waste of time, I'm going now to request the second speaker, Father Lawrence, who is the Executive Director of the Fohloza Foundation. We are jumping item number 1 because we are still waiting for the Principal and Vice Chancellor. She's on her way, so we don't want to waste much time. So as soon as she arrives, we will ask her to do that particular part. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Father Lawrence, who is the Executive Director of the Fohloza Foundation, to have few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gift Baloyi, our Program Director. Our distinguished guest and speaker today, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, whom we're absolutely delighted that she has agreed to join us this evening as we reflect on this very important document in the history of our country and in the theological movement in this country. Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, I would like to greet all of you, the leadership of the university, the deans, the chairpersons of departments, and all who are gathered here. I stand here in particular on behalf of Professor Sipho Mselegu, who is the chair of the Fohloza Foundation Board, the Sakumnoto Group, who have been supporters of the Fohloza Foundation, but also to greet in particular UNISA, who has been our partner for so many years now, that we have been building for a while. Allow me to single out those whom we work a bit more directly with, certainly Professor Gift Baloyi and their wonderful department, in Professor Lepaka, whom we work in the work that we're doing in the development of our people, in training, and in many other facets. This year, in its 40th year, the Kairos document was that seminal document that allowed the Christian community in particular, the theological societies of this country, to stand up and to put the right name and the right teaching of the Gospels for the emancipation of our people. And with this context in mind, we thought it was important that we mark this very important milestone of this document in looking at the core ideologies that must persist even today as human rights and dignity, enshrined particularly in the Gospels, but also in the many faith religions that find expression. It is important also that this prophetic document should not be forgotten in its most important, but also as a catalyst for the prophetic voice of the many communities and persons across the world. Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, dignitaries, dear friends, we're very encouraged by its call to action, even now and even to this very day. It has brought many an inspiration to communities and persons across the world and has solidified the path to justice, peace, and the advancement of human dignity. We're most grateful to have this engagement tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father Lawrence, for such a wonderful introduction and remarks. We will now move to the next item, where we're going to invite Professor Mukele Madise, the Director of the School of Humanity, to say some few words on behalf of the College of Human Sciences. Professor Madise, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Program Director, the Vice Chancellor in her absentia, hopefully she will be joining us later, Professor Puleng Lenkabula, our distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, members of the University Council, Vice Principals and Executive Deans, the Executive Director of the Fohloza Foundation, Father Lawrence Ndlovu. I don't know if he's here. If not, he's here. Oh. Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and members of the diplomatic corps, colleagues, partners, and distinguished guests, once more, good evening. It is a privilege to bring you greetings and appreciation on behalf of the College of Human Sciences at the University of South Africa. The college stands at the very heart of UNISA's mission to define tomorrow, shaping futures through scholarship that serves humanity with integrity, justice, and care. We are deeply honored to co-host this year's Kairos lecture under the theme, Kairos at 40, a call to prophetic renewal and ethical courage. This milestone offers us not only a moment of reflection, but also a renewed sense of purpose to continue engaging with pressing questions of our time through critical, ethical, and human-centered lens of the humanities. The Fohloza Foundation has indeed found a true home within the humanities, a space where compassion, reflection, and imagination converge. Together with the Department of Philosophy, Practical and Systematic Theology, this partnership continues to advance our shared mission, not only to enhance the visibility of the college and the university, but to also contribute meaningfully to the formation of ethical leadership within both ecumenical institutions and the national security clusters. Through this collaboration, we have been privileged to offer leadership formation and capacity building programs for ecumenical leaders across Gauteng, Limpopo, and KwaZulu-Natal, and I hope this will also extend to other provinces as well, and not just within the three provinces. These engagements have strengthened ethical leadership within churches and faith-based networks, affirming the enduring relevance of theology and philosophy in public life. Furthermore, our partnership with Fohloza Foundation has enabled the college to provide continuous professional development for all chaplains of the South African Police Services across all provinces. These programs, focusing on pastoral care, counseling, and trauma support, remind us that true scholarship must transcend academic walls. It must empower, heal, and inspire those who serve on the front lines of our communities. This synergy between academic inquiry and social practice embodies the very spirit of the Kairos, a recognition of the opportune moment to respond with ethical courage and prophetic light or insight to the needs of humanity. In conclusion, as we celebrate Kairos 40, or Kairos at 40, we do so with gratitude to our partners, colleagues, and friends who continue to make this work possible. The College of Human Sciences remains committed to nurturing leaders who will work with critically and who will think critically, act justly, and serve humanity faithfully, ensuring that our scholarship continues to define tomorrow for generations to come. With these few words, I want to thank you, Program Director, and ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Professor Madise, for your words of, from the College of Human Science, your remarks. And thank you that you were able in your speech to provide at least an overview of the relationship that we have with the Fohloza Foundation and the work that we do together as the department and the foundation. We are now going to invite our Executive Dean, Professor Zaitun Nkosi, to do the introduction of the keynote speaker.
Thank you, Program Director. Dumelang. Ndi Madekwan. Sanbonan. Salam alaikum. Lochani. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure and gratitude to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who is the former chair of the African Union Commission and the chancellor of the University of Limpopo. Kindly be patient with me because I got 20 pages. I tried to consolidate it to 3 pages, and she used a small phone. That's why I'm wearing my glasses. Dr. Dlamini Zuma holds a BSc degree in zoology and botany from the University of Zululand. She also has got MB CHB from the University of Tropical Medicine, from the Bristol University. And we all know Dr. Dlamini Zuma. She has served in several portfolios, but let me start about her academic journey. She served as a research technician to Professor Adams from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She also served as a vice president of the South African Students Organization, which is SASO. She was the chairperson of ANC Youth Section in Great Britain from 1977 and 1978. How many years, guys? Yes, it shows ukuthi siphethe imbokodo. Dr. Dlamini Zuma worked as a medical officer in pediatrics at Mbabane Government Hospital in Swaziland and also in a pediatric attachment at Whittington Hospital in England. She was the founder and director of Health Refugee Trust, Health and Development Organization in England, and she also worked as for ANC Health Department in Lusaka, Zambia. On her return to South Africa, Dr. Dlamini Zuma served as chairperson of the ANC Southern Natal Region Health Committee and also as a member of ESCO. She has worked as a research scientist at the MRC in Durban, and she also served as a member of the Steering Committee, National AIDS Coordinating Committee. She was also a deputy chairperson of the United Nations AIDS, UNAIDS, and the provincial chairperson for ANC Women's League. Dr. Dlamini Zuma also served as the president of the United Nations World Conference Against Racism a president of the Ministers' Councils for the United Nations World Summit on Sustainable Development, and had led a number of peace initiatives in DRC, Comoros, Lesotho, and many other countries. We all know her for implementing a no-smoking policy in public areas. May we give her a round of applause? Yes, she's a member of ANC Women's League National Executive Committee, a member of Social International Commission. Now, Dr. Dlamini Zuma has served in more than 10 ministerial positions. Let's count. Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Minister in the Presidency, Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Health, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and now she also became African Union Commission as a chairperson. And she also joined Minister and the President for Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation. Can you see now? Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth, and People. Yes, others are hidden. And then academically, Dr. Dlamini Zuma is a gifted academic. She holds an honorary degree of Doctor of Law from the University of Natal, which is known now as the University of KwaZulu-Natal, from the University of Bristol, from the University of Transkei, which is known now as WUSU, it's Medunsa, and she's an honorary professor for Belarusian State University. She has obtained awards from the World Health Organization because of her policy on tobacco-free world. She also got an award by International Women Forum, also awarded by NEPAD. It's not only here in South Africa. Mali, Russia, and Cuba awarded Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. May we give her a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, as she comes to you.
That sounded like an obituary. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'm going to greet the Chancellor of this university, even if he's not here, President Thabo Mbeki, members of the University Council. I must greet the Vice Chancellor, even if she hasn't arrived. But let me greet all the executive deans and the executive director of Fotloza, Father Lawrence. I must be respectful, umfundiswa. And all the chairs of departments, ambassadors, high commissioners, and members of the diplomatic corps, leaders of ecumenical institutions, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It was with honor and humility that I accepted to speak. But having accepted, I thought, this is difficult. But we are celebrating Kairos 40. First, the concept of Kairos was first introduced into theological discourse by a German theologian, Paul Tillich. It was in 1922. He did a seminal essay, which he titled Kairos, which was describing a critical and opportune moment in history, a qualitative time that demands decisive and transformational action. And of course, he was writing this in the aftermath of World War I. He employed the term to name a period of profound moral and spiritual crisis in Germany. One that required humanity to respond ethically and courageously to the breakdown of social order. You know, wars create problems in society. The theological insight later found powerful resonance in the South African context, where the church was confronted by the moral and structural evil of apartheid. In this setting in South Africa, theologians and faith leaders appropriated Tilly's notion of Kairos as a prophetic category, interpreting their historical moment as one in which neutrality as a church had become complicit. So this document reimagined Paul Tilly's concept as a contextual theology of liberation, transforming a philosophical reflection into a lived praxis of faith, justice, and resistance. In doing so, the church in South Africa gave global theological expression to the conviction that every historic crisis is a moral summon to act in defense of human dignity and the common good. In South Africa, the Kairos document, written in the midst of struggle during apartheid, represented a bold and prophetic challenge to systemic injustice, and it was a glaring call for moral renewal under the rubric, I quote, "The time has come, the moment of truth has arrived," close quote. It arose in response to the systemic oppression, dehumanization, and structural violence, denying the majority of the people in this country their God-given worth and dignity. But on the other hand, it was exposing the moral bankruptcy of a regime that sought to sanctify oppression through distorting theology. During apartheid, the government not only oppressed and killed South Africans within our borders, but it also followed them across to Africa and even to Europe. There were attacks by the regime in many countries. I'll name a few: Angola, Lesotho, Swaziland, Mozambique, Zambia, Botswana. Even in Europe, Comrade Dalsy September was killed in Paris. That's how cruel that regime was. And in response to that, the Organization of African Unity, now the AU, decided to boycott South Africa. The entire continent boycotted South Africa. SAA, South African Airways, was not allowed to fly in the African airspace. And many countries endorsed the passports of their citizens that it's not allowed to enter South Africa. They did this in solidarity with us. Coming back to Kairos, it was rooted in the principles of prophetic theology. It called for decisive break from neutrality and demanded a faith that takes sides with the oppressed, insisting that true theology must be lived through justice, solidarity, and active resistance to evil. At its core, Kairos stood as both a cry of resistance and a correction to theologies that manipulated scripture to legitimize injustice, calling upon the church to reclaim its prophetic vocation as the defender of truth, justice, and the sanctity of all human life. The South African Kairos document, published in 1985, was not merely a theological text. It was a moral indictment of society built on racial oppression, economic exploitation, and political violence. It challenged the church to move beyond passive observation, to confront injustice wherever it appeared, and to stand in unwavering solidarity with the oppressed. Its foundational conviction was that faith cannot be divorced from justice, that theology must be a living ethical practice which engages history, unmasks falsehoods, and transforms society. The call of Kairos was clear. The church must speak out and act courageously in pursuit of justice and human dignity. In heeding this call, the church joined hands with human rights activists, liberation movements, civic organizations, forming a powerful moral alliance that exposed the immorality of apartheid to the world. The prophetic stance was deeply reinforced by South African liberation theologians, such as Alan Busak, Desmond Tutu, Simon Memela, Frank Chikane, Tumeleng Mosala, Takatso Mofokeng, Bani Pichana, and many others, and later followed by Tenyiko Maluleke, Puleng, Vuyane, and many others who collectively asserted that the church must remain the voice of the voiceless, and that the moral conscience of society, the church must be the moral conscience of society. Through its unwavering witness, the Kairos movement not only strengthened the struggle for freedom, but also redefined the role of the church as an active moral agent, one whose fidelity to the gospel is measured by the steadfast commitment to justice, truth, and the defense of human dignity. Desmond Tutu described the church as the moral conscience of society, emphasizing its prophetic responsibility to speak truth to power and advocate for justice, particularly in the context of systemic oppression. During apartheid, this vision was realized in practice, and the church courageously opposed racial segregation, supported victims of state violence, and collaborated with civil society and human rights activists to expose and resist injustice. Churches provided shelter, platforms for mobilization, moral guidance, demonstrated that faith without action was complicit with oppression. In this regard, Mosala and Mofokeng reinforced that the church's theological task is inseparable from its ethical responsibility. It must amplify the cries of the oppressed and embody justice in concrete practice. So 40 years on, where are we? 40 years after Kairos first called the church to prophetic courage, how do we recognize and respond to the Kairos of our own time? What defines this moment in history? I will say what I think. You can add. I think what defines this moment is deep inequality in this country. Poverty, crime, the drugs, violence, gender-based violence and femicide, erosion of human dignity, moral decay, and unethical behavior. Now, is the church and the theologians up to this challenge? And what is the nature of the church today? Is it the same as 40 years ago? Does it still believe in the dignity of all created in the image of God? The church must answer. I will not answer. But what does the church today believe? Is it state theology that blesses power and defends injustice? Is it church theology that prays for peace without confronting oppression or indignity? Prophetic theology that takes sides with the oppressed and speaks truth to power? Which of the three? I don't know. Is the church and some theologians not emphasizing commercialization today? Some of them drain people of their wealth, prophesying prosperity and miracles, rather than authentic moral leadership. Is the church not too inward-looking, instead of caring about the people who sit on their benches and pews in church and humanity at large? I'll put questions, no answers. The church must answer. Faced with these challenges, the question becomes very urgent. How do we reimagine this Kairos today? How can the church confront its own internal failures while simultaneously addressing societal injustices, reclaiming its role as a moral compass, a refuge for the vulnerable, and a proactive agent of liberation and human well-being? Reimagining Kairos in this context demands courage, radical ethical commitment, and a willingness to engage the prophetic vocation of the church, not merely as rhetoric, but as transformative praxis. It is essential, however, to recognize that the church is fundamentally distinct from the state, even while it interacts with the state and has to interact with the state as a moral voice, a vehicle of hope and transformation. Philosophically, the state is a political and administrative apparatus tasked with governance, regulations, maintenance of law and order, and its legitimacy rests on laws, institutions, and the consent of citizens. Whilst the church, by contrast, is grounded in a moral and spiritual authority that transcends legislation, its legitimacy derives from ethical imperatives, conscience, and the pursuit of justice and human dignity. But the church, we know, does not exist in isolation. It operates within the structures of society, engaging with the state where necessary to advocate for policies that promote human welfare, protect the vulnerable, and ensure that freedom and justice are not merely aspirational ideals, but lived realities. In this sense, the church is both a critic of government, but also a partner, a voice that holds the state accountable while also collaborating where the common good demands shared action. At this moment, the continent has fully embraced South Africa. Remember, it had isolated it, boycotted it. Now it has fully embraced South Africa, and South Africa is fully integrated in the continent. And this moment requires unity of the continent. How can both government and the church advocate for this unity of the continent? And also, Africa is involved in intra-Africa trade, skills revolution. The church used to be very good in skills once upon a time, education and all that. And if we promote intra-Africa trade and the skills revolution, this will contribute towards eradication of poverty and inequality. So how can the church contribute to us realizing that we are Africans? We're not South Africans. We're Africans who live in South Africa. There is a difference. We're first Africans. We happen to live in South Africa. And some people don't believe that. And as Africans, we are 1.4 billion plus. Can you imagine if you were a businessman or woman with a market of 1.4? But if you think you're South African, it's only 60 million. So we're Africans who live in South Africa. And all Africans must recognize that there are Africans living in Nigeria, Africans living in Kenya, but Africans. And also, our fortunes as Africans are intertwined. There can be no island of prosperity in the sea of poverty. We must all prosper. But I also want to remind us as South Africans that in 2024, 76% of tourists that arrived on our shores came from the continent of Africa. But what do you call them? Foreigners. How can they be foreigners here? And then we call others tourists. We call Africans foreigners. That's wrong. The church must deal with that. So what do we need now? We need a Pan-African Kairos, not just a South African Kairos. Father, do you agree with that? A vision of shared destiny, ethical leadership, and continental solidarity. And Africa must no longer be a victim of extraction and exploitation. Africa must become a moral conscience of the world. A continent that heals rather than bleeds, that gives rather than begs, Why should we be beggars? There's no power in a begging hand. And we don't need to beg, really, as a continent. We have everything that everyone needs. If only we were to take charge. This is not time to despair, no. This is time to be decisive. Whether we will keep the status quo, I don't think we should, or whether we'll bring drastic change to the ownership and control of our minerals, our natural resources, and our economies. But not only as South Africa, I'm talking about the continent as a whole. Academics, in your Kairos, where are you? I don't know. But I think as you impart knowledge to your students, conscience and justice must underpin the knowledge you are imparting. And to politicians, I think leadership without justice and conscience is management of decay. To the people, I don't think we should wait for heroes. We need to act with justice, conscience, morality, and ethics. So, there is also a scourge I cannot escape: gender-based violence. How can the church contribute to the fight against gender-based violence? The protection of women and children, social cohesion, justice, and family development. The church must not be absent in those. But let us honor the Kairos document and those who wrote it and implemented it, not only in words, but in deeds. By making our faith active, our voices courageous, and our commitment to justice unwavering. 40 years ago, the Kairos dared to name the sin and call the church to account. Today, we must carry that torch. May we be prophetic, fearless, and unwavering, ensuring that the message of Kairos, a decisive moment, continues to shape our actions, continues to shape our nation, our continent, and the world. I thank you. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, for such a wonderful keynote. I'm quite sure that the theologians that are here have listened with understanding, and out of your paper, as seated there, I wrote few notes. And that idea of Pan-African Kairos is quite powerful. I've never had a conversation at the theological space where an idea of the rebirth of Pan-African ideology is put on the table. So you've given us something to think about and broaden beyond what it is today. So with that note, ladies and gentlemen, I now will invite the Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Puleng Linkabula, to come forward and, do the response to this wonderful lecture that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma has delivered today. VC, I hand over the podium.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm truly honored to be here, not to welcome, because Professor Nkosi has done the welcome, I'm told. You have done it, Professor Nkosi. Not yet. Oh, I apologize. I thought the Dean had already welcomed you. So let me take the opportunity at least to thank our keynote speaker, Her Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Zuma, for an excellent, and also for inviting not only our cognitive spaces, but also the heart, the commitment to doing what is right, what is good, what is relevant, what is empathetic, what is also undoing the legacies of injustices in our country. And therefore, let me extend my appreciation and request you to give her another round of applause. When a medical doctor and a diplomat understands the issues of spirituality and Christianity and the invitation to being counterculture to the ideological weapons of death in our society, in the continent, in the world, then we should be happy that multidisciplinarity and dialogue become important invitations. I also thought, Dr. Nkosazana, without deviating from my responsibility of welcoming, as we are doing also the response, I thought it was important at least to acknowledge the presence of the member of council of our university, Professor Msoma, who was also one of the writers of the Kairos document. He's here amongst us. Can I request a round of applause? Let me also recognize the members of executive and extended management represented by Professor Nkosi and all senior leaders of our university. I see at the back, Professor Masinya is sitting at the back. Dr. Nkosazana, Professor Masinya was the first black woman theologian to be appointed by UNISA, and she has done great work for the university. Thank you very much. Let me recognize the Deputy Dean, Professor Mashao, and the team. Colleagues, please forgive me if you're internal, but I've already recognized you. But I do recognize that the organizing team, I really thank you for the work. But more importantly, His Excellency, Mr. Georges S.W. Patton, Ambassador of the Republic of Liberia. Let me also recognize His Excellency Fakri Rodriguez Pinelo, the Ambassador of the Republic of Cuba. Let me also recognize, thank you very much, Her Excellency Ms. Maria Tsotsukova, I hope I've said it properly, the Ambassador of the Republic of Bulgaria, and also Her Excellency Ms. Mazuba Monze, the High Commissioner of the Republic of Zambia, Ulse Mulishani. Let's also recognize Her Excellency Mr. Hanan Jara, Ambassador of the State of Palestine, or from the Embassy of the State of Palestine, and then Mr. Victor Makur Madutio, Finance Attaché of the Embassy of the Republic of Sudan, as well as Mr. Brito, Second Secretary of the Republic of Cuba. Let me request that we give them a round of applause. And then I also am told that the Dean of the Arab Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Mahash Saeed Al-Ahmedi, is also here. Can I request a round of applause? Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Shukran. Thank you. Colleagues, I'd like to thank Her Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, for reminding us about the imperative of the Kairos as an invitation for theologians to creating a counterculture against system of oppression, of the denigration of humanity, especially of black people, of the entwinement of empire with the ideological weapons of death, as I've already stated. One of the critical lessons I've heard in the lecture is really a re-invitation for us as theologians, as scholars, as social activists, to looking at how the Kairos can be a moment that invites us to reading the signs of times of present as it is to learning from the past and imagining the future, taking the resources of our lived concrete realities, as well as of our advocacy, but also claiming the humanity in a world that sometimes creates gradations of who is human and who is not human, and taking from our experience. I draw on the work of Vuyani Velem in his explanation of how we should understand the Kairos. First, the Kairos as a moment, not just a time, as a moment that allows us to reflect on what is happening. It's not chronos, it's not time as linear, oh, let's finish the meeting at 7. It's about that moment of encounter with the truth, with the invitation to changing. And in his definition, he says, as the Greeks say it, is the Kairos, is a word that connotes a particular kind of time, that it's an opportune moment or a crisis. It is a moment that is preeminently distinct to mark a different period from another period or epoch. It doesn't just mean the same thing as chronos, which is time, and which is also somewhat the Greeks would have explained. But it is a crisis, it's a judgment that brings out the best in the people and in the worst of times, so that we reflect about the future that we must work with. I like this definition because it seems to cohere with our own notion of time as Africans, which is often embedded in the idea of the recognition of the personhood of others, that notion of Ubuntu that recognizes that we are inextricably bound with each other. And I think that invitation becomes even more important, therefore, for inviting our prophetic advocacy or activism as a university, but also as theologians, ethicists, or social scientists, or even natural scientists. But the second point that I hear Her Excellency reminding us is that the Kairos is not just a recognition of a moment or a critical assessment of a moment, but it's an invitation to truth-telling so that we can transform and collectively look at those resources where truth helps us to humanize, to recognize the humane or the innate integrity, the dignity of creation that we encounter. I also hear her helping us as theologians, especially South African theologians, to remembering the sources of history, including the extent that it was just a few theologians. They didn't want to be popular, but they wanted to speak truth in ways that it would change, reminding us of both male and female theologians who were at the heart of truth-telling. Whilst I know that he has referred to Professor Musoma, who's here, Professor Maimela, Professor Musala, Takatso Mofokeng, Mukheti Mutlabi, Albert Nolan, and others, I thought it was also important, at least in this meeting, to also draw on the women who sometimes their voices are not entailed when we recall the Kairos that was written at the Institute for Contextual Theology that I happened to have served and to work at. I worked at Institute before I came here. There was Brigadier Bam, who was also part of the reflexive team here at home, but also even as she was in Geneva at the World Council of Churches. There was also Mutlalipula Chabaku. I don't know how many young theologians remember Mutlalipula with her deep voice and her advocacy. There was also Sister Mary Ngube, wearing her head as a nun, but speaking truth to power, even in the Roman Catholic Church, where the voices of women at the time could not find expression. And if you did not know also Roxanne Jordan, the wife to Danny Jordan, the SAFA president, was equally one of those women that were part of the dialogical partners in the reflexivity of South Africa around Black theology that was committed to the Black community, but also to the broader humanity to ensure that justice is manifest in our society. These are the women who said, the Kairos will not be meaningful if it doesn't take into cognizance that all humanity is created in the image of God. That all sacred texts, especially of the Abrahamic texts, recognize that this innate integrity, and therefore even as we trample upon or undermine, we are also undermining the image of God in each other. So apartheid was not just an affront to Black people, according to Vellum and to Nkosazana. It was an affront to the Creator for the denigration of humanity was its center. And therefore, it's something that all these theologians and social activists and others were calling to. But I hear her also saying, but the women theologians also equally demonstrated the fault lines of thinking about dehumanizing structures, political, economic, social, disability, and others, if they don't take into cognizance women, girls, and other colleagues who may be suffering from disability or other oppressions. And by so saying, they raised the questions of patriarchal and kyriarchal structures that sometimes are very difficult in the church and society, in the synagogue and in the mosque to attend to. And therefore, this is the question that we should reflect on. What does it mean, therefore, to talking about the Kairos and its invitation for creating a humanizing theology that is attentive, that all people are created in the image of God, and therefore all our systems, practices, structures, theologies must be responsive to that. I hear you asking us a very difficult question, saying, yes, we had the Kairos document that invited the church to being at the center and as an agent of transformation in our society. And yet the church, as we speak, has become that text that Old Testament or Hebrew scripture scholars remind us, where it's become the den of vultures, the predators that draw on the suffering of the people, making profit instead of humanizing them. In her own words, she says, the church has become commercialized. In our theological world, we say it has become a prosperity theology that closes others, and that only, as the prophets would remind us, allows the elite into the center, and tramples upon the poor. And if we go to biblical witness, we would also remember that it is the prophets who reminded us that they build upon house and house, taking from the poor instead of creating policies, systems, structures that allow all members of society to live in with dignity. And this is the question that Dr. Nkosazana asked us. After the invitation for the Kairos, was our praxis of theology or even of life in the context of democracy attentive to the crucibles or the crucified cross bearers, as Takatso Mufokeng reminds us? And I think we also, if we were to draw from our colleagues from elsewhere, we'll remember that Bath reminded us that this is a strange world, reminded us that it is a world that requires us to look into the moral landscapes that refuse to accommodate abusive power, that should unmask false piety, and that should insist on theologies, on politics, on economics that are attentive to these dynamics of humanizing, but being attentive also to ecology, especially for us as Africans, because we often say we are who we are because we are integrated with our world and with ecology. The third aspect, Dr. Nkosazana Zuma says, we, the elites, are colluding with systems of oppression. She did not use that language. What she said, she says, we are quiet. She says, where are the voices of the intellectuals, academicians, when the state is faltering on its policies? Where are the voices of the theologians, academics, when the private sector is looting and looting and looting more for profit margins and not necessarily for transformation of society? These are the questions that she poses to you. I'm just re-emphasizing them because therefore it means after this we will have to go back and check, is our vocation being lived out? Or are we just churning papers so that NRF and DHET can recognize us? I think these are critical questions, colleagues, because also, if you think about the Kairos movement in South Africa, it did not just end there. One of the critical questions that Vianney Velem had raised was that it would seem to us that as Christians, we've become comfortable with one another without understanding or engaging with other religions. And I think we should take a lesson from the writers of the Kairos, because they didn't just stay here in South Africa and allow the discussions of injustices to be limited to South Africa. If you think about it, they went to Geneva to fight for racism to be institutionalized as a program that the churches should drive, anti-racism work, to be instituted as the work that the World Council of Churches and other ecumenical movements like the World Communion of Reformed Churches should have driven. And they declared apartheid a heresy. They decided not to invest in the death-dealing governance of apartheid. And this is what also Nkosazana has reminded us. She says, our leaders who wrote the Kairos document took it to the world aligned in solidarity with those who needed their humanity to being restored, to being fought for, to being asserted. Nkosazana and colleagues, I was one of the fortunate people to have the opportunity to go to Palestine. In the year where the Kairos Palestine was celebrating 1 year anniversary. From the airport here, LL started criminalizing me in our own country, taking our phones, asking us why we were going to Palestine. I know that one of the ministers in this country went back, but some of us were lucky to fight it until we got to Palestine. When I was in Palestine, I passed through, what's the city? No, not Gaza. No. First, the city that everybody lands in Tel Aviv. Beautiful, well planned. Everybody is, I went through Tel Aviv, not Lebanon, or Jordan. When I went there, colleagues, I was treated like a criminal. In the plane, there were 2 Israeli police surrounding me. I was an academic in this university before I left and came back. I had these 2 security personnel who had my phone, my laptop, and I only got it when I landed. I was part of the World Council of Churches accompaniment for Palestine mission, that ecumenical program. I was treated like a criminal for only showing solidarity. And in the commemoration, we went to Palestine. I was staying at the Lutheran mission in Palestine. I saw the violent faces, the painful faces of the Palestinians and their experiences. On top of Palestinian homes, the colleagues would build skyscrapers. So let's take Tembisa. You, the wealthy people of South Africa, you go and build on top of the Tembisa homes, skyscrapers. And then you throw trash, including fecal matter, on the passages and hallways where they had to pass. I passed through it. They would have put mesh and cardboard boxes, and they would throw fecal matter. I've experienced it. I'm not talking about something that somebody told me. We went to Hebron. We woke up, passed through the checkpoints, reliving the very same experiences of apartheid where people had to have passbooks. At 3 o'clock, the medical doctors from Palestine who were going to Jerusalem, because they worked as medical doctors, would be checked by 19 and 20-year-olds, humiliated and sometimes sent back to where they came from. Because we had other passports, not Palestinian passports, and because we had Europeans, Americans, and ourselves in the ecumenical community, we were allowed to go there. We went to Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, there's a semblance of, we are one together, Muslims, Jews, Jewish religion, as well as Christians and Baha'i. It's a melting pot. You know, the musician, the reggae musician, reminds us that that's where everybody meets and they live with peace. I did not witness the peace that I heard from those songs that gave me hope. I saw the decimation of life with my own eyes and the denigration of others. We went to Hebron. In Hebron, we were insulted even before we started to arrive by Jewish women advocates and families, because we were going to a mosque where inside that mosque were Palestinians and perhaps the visitors or the tourists of other religions go to worship. The colleagues from Jewish tradition had cut it inside and taken what they called their own prayer space inside the mosque. And the Muslims, the Palestinians, who were going to the mosque had to walk a longer distance to the mosque. These are the true stories and reflections of how apartheid, as we understood it within the context of South Africa, was happening in Palestine. And I think, in the words of Dr. Zuma, we must use these experiences to have moments of solidarity where we do not limit the calls for justice, for liberation, and for spirituality just to ourselves for self-interest, but to use these experiences and these lessons to ensure that we build moments of truth in which the church, but also progressive members of society, political parties, can develop moral conscience, not just institutions for self-enrichment or even entertainment. If we reimagine the Kairos, we must expose, resist, but also create countercultures and alternative systems that allows us to humanize those who are trampled upon, as the experiences that our forebears like Tutu would have done when he created the solidarity with the Palestinians and agreed to project their cry for recognition and for their humanity. Finally, while I understand that for us, theologians, ethicists, social scientists, natural scientists, our work is to develop knowledge, to create histories, to form, to mentor others. I think I hear Dr. Nkosazana Zuma saying, it is not just to be limited to these classrooms, to these halls, to the laboratories, but we must look into how we can have reflections that are inclusive, that are about sustainability, that humanize those who are not considered human in our world, and that call our leaders to be accountable. Because if we do so, we will be in the spirit of the prophets, not only telling the truth, but building the future where every humanity and where God's creation lives with dignity. Let me thank you for the opportunity and wish you all the best.
Siyabonga kakhulu. Thank you very much. Let's give our principal and VC a hand of applause for such an inspiring response. And also to our keynote speaker, Umama, Tinage Simbizu Mamu NTZ. Igama esilisebenzisayo ke thina. Siyabonga kakhulu Mama for such a wonderful lecture that you have given us, also very inspiring. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, good evening. I've been tasked to do kind of like way forward. I was asking my program director and said, what way forward do you want me to give? And I said, maybe let's take some questions. After such a very appreciative and contextual talks that we've had within our institution here at the University of South Africa, I guess this is the third engagement of us discussing about Kairos. The first one, we held it earlier this year in the office of our school director, which was held here, and had an engagement about the Kairos since we are celebrating the 40th. In September, we were in Cape Town under Desmond Tutu, and also deliberating and celebrating this Kairos moment. But I also want to appreciate in the Department of Philosophy, Practical and Systematic Theology, Prof. Gift Baloyi, as he's working there as our MC, who also ensured that we come back and have this deliberation once again about this. As I was sitting listening to all these papers being read, he actually was what do you call them, guest editor. And we were collecting papers on Kairos, and a lot of scholars, they wrote about Kairos. I wish we can open that door and have these two papers that we've had today, so that as scholars, we can file them and read about these things. One thing that was powerful, and I think I've heard it also correctly, when Umama said to us, Africa must be a moral conscience of the world. And Prof also mentioned to us that this Kairos didn't only end with the South African Kairos of 1985. After that, there were many other Kairos that were formed, whether they were documents. Our VC has mentioned the Kairos Palestine that was formed around 2009, learning from what we've done. And many others, the road to Damascus, which is also there, which was informed by our Kairos. And now we are having another idea of forming Pan-African Kairos. And I think indeed this is a seed planted in our heads to say, let's look at this. Maybe you are seated there as I'm also reflecting on what has been given to us, and you are probably saying, I have a question to our speakers, and I want to invite you to just ask a question, and maybe just to lay some few ground rules. Let the question be a question and not necessarily a comment, particularly with the time that we have. Number two, I will just take maybe 3 or 4 of those questions, and short and concise. Yeah, concise is short, yeah. Please be short so that we are able to hear it. If you can just mention your name and pose your question either to Umama or to Prof, if you wish so, and then they will be responding. And we also have some great minds also sitting around. Some of the questions, we will take them as well. We have also Prof. Musoma there. We will share those questions if needs be. But I want to allow you to ask your questions. I know some of you, maybe it's the first time coming to this Senate Hall. In front of you, there's these technological gadgets. Our IT guys are here, so they will help us. Oh, we're using the roving mic. Oh, okay. We have roving mics instead of pressing there. We have roving mics. If you can just raise your hand, and then I will try and see you, and then we take your questions. I'll take 3 or 4 questions if there are. I'll start with you. Please forgive me because I'll just say CC Mama because I don't know your titles. Please forgive me. That's the first one. Where's the second one? Oh, I see another hand, the second one. Is there any other hand? Maybe the third question. Okay, let's start with the first. Oh, here's the third one. Because you are closer, they will take that first, second, then we'll come to the third one.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Permission Wagatobejani. My question is directed to Mama Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. In your address, you emphasized the fact that we must be a moral conscience of society. Now, my question is, how do we act with this justice, morality, conscience, and ethics in a society where we are likely to be victimized and also assassinated?
Let's do the second one. Usisi, yes. Here's the mic behind you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Sipho Mahlangu, my name is Molly Dlamini. I was not going to ask a question, but you were looking for a third hand. 2 quick questions. One, my question is directed to Dr. Dlamini-Zuma and Professor Buleng, and my question is, in your views, what should be the critical sectors of the economy that the Kairos, the current Kairos, 40 years later, should speak to? especially because we are in another state of emergency, like we were in 1985. And two, Palestine, Cuba, Western Sahara. What should the Kairos say about those three countries and the struggles that they face and the role of the church with those current continuing struggles in those three countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. Thank the presentation. Doctor, thank you very much for the awakening. The next generation of after Kairos, people who were born after Kairos, I think the question comes from that generation. Yeah, to measure, how we gonna measure the praxis of faith or the transformation, or the doctor talked about transformic praxis. How we gonna measure the praxis, the transformic praxis, benchmarking it with the Ark of the Covenant? Could it be from there before 1922 or something, or 10 Commandments? As could we say, faith must follow us that moment of truth, the time that we measure the shocks or the aftershocks of the moment with the, other than Buntlantam Kwanas or the Palestine issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I so hope that our panelists, they were able to note those questions. And if not, we will ask those who ask maybe to clarify one or two. But let's probably ask Umama to take the first one, if you can. Prof, you can also assist, maybe if you want to come with another one. Thank you.
If you don't mind, can she just repeat the question?
The first question.
Thank you. The question is, how do we act with justice, morality, conscience, and ethics in a society where we are likely to be victimized and assassinated?
Okay, I think what we are saying does not exclude, it's about society. It's about transforming society so that it doesn't victimize or kill you. Because the way you are asking is like you are there and then there's society there. No. We are saying the church, the academics, the politicians, all of us must transform society. And we must be the moral conscience so that society understands that we don't agree that people must be victimized or killed. So all of us must work together to deal with that. And that's why I was specific about gender-based violence, because I take it you're talking about women mainly. About gender-based violence, that all of us have a responsibility to deal with that. But it starts at home as far as I'm concerned. It's also about us women. How do we raise our children? Do we raise the girl child as a servant of the house and the boy child as a prince of the house? Because you come to some homes and a boy has been playing outside, comes back to the house. No more sangenzeliti. He has got hands, he has got eyes, he knows he can switch off the kettle and make himself tea and make the rest of us tea. But he wants the sister to stand up and make tea for him. And the parents keep quiet. That, for me, that is wrong. We must treat our children to know, to respect each other, to know that they are equal. There is no king in this house who's going to dictate to women. At school, it must be the same thing. Outside in societies, it must be the same thing. In the church. And unfortunately, I belong to a church that still doesn't recognize women fully.
The nice part is umfundisi useduze kwakho.
I don't see why we can't have women priests. So there is still work within the church itself. There is work in society, there is work at home, there is work in the school to make sure that what we are scared of, being victimized and maybe killed, does not happen. It's all our responsibility. I don't know whether I've answered you. Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll take the second question. I don't know if Prof, you'd want to take the second question.
I thought Mam Nkosazana had already responded to the question, but I also, maybe if I were to add on what she has said, apartheid was violent. It was a death-dealing system, and people were facing death and staring it in their eyes because they were constantly not treated as human beings. And at no point does it mean to being courageous to transforming systems. You must now not be attentive to the fact that the context we live in, whether it's the context of empire, whether it's the context of military-industrial complex, where violence has been institutionalized in our societies, we now have to keep quiet. It means we must at all times be cross-bearers and call for peace, for justice, and for truth, and for humanizing cultures. And to do so, we must build strong societies and communities, as Dr. Nkosazana refers to. And gender-based violence is an example because it's not just how women and girls are maimed, it's also how men who are gendered as effeminate are also taken. So if you think of the global hierarchy, it means African men, Arab men, others will be in the hierarchy of the marginalized before they even step on the African women or whatever. So we have to look into these aspects with also a global and a local interface, because what we do here at home still has resonance elsewhere, and what happens elsewhere still has resonance at home. So I think it's communities, it's systems, multilateral systems that Nkosazana represented, is even this call for Pan-African lens, because we often think about just ourselves as South Africans as though we are not entwined with other communities and their struggles anywhere in the world. So I think this is a very profound invitation that we must wrestle with. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think there was a question on the economy. Have you?
Not at all. I was waiting for you.
Okay, on the economy, I'll talk about the economy of the continent, not necessarily South Africa, but South Africa. Some South Africans forget. They say, when you say, "Oh, I haven't seen you, where have you been?" They say, "Africa." And where are you now? So, you see, as Africans, we actually have everything that other people have used to develop. I'll start with maybe just a simple thing like chocolate, right? Which most of our kids can't afford. But the cocoa beans come from our continent. They get sent out. We get how much? About 8 billion collectively for those who have cocoa beans. But the chocolate industry is more than 100 billion. So what we must, I know Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire have now started making their own chocolates. I hope they can accelerate that. We have lots of tons of cotton, more than 1 million tons of cotton. But 90% of it is exported raw. And we pay billions to buy textiles. Why can't we? It's only Egypt with its linen that does quite a bit of processing of the cotton, but the rest of us, no. So if we want the economy to grow, we must do that. Our minerals, what mineral is there in the world that we don't have on the continent? I can't think of any. We have all the minerals, but what do? We get outside people to come and dig our minerals, and they take them straight to the port, to their countries. When they've beneficiated them, most of the time we can't afford those things because they're now too expensive. You send things raw, you are a price taker, not a price caller. It's our minerals, but we are a price taker. You send things raw, you export jobs, we say there are no jobs, but we export them every day. We export revenue every day because we sell cheap and we buy expensive. Food. Why should Africa import food? 100 billion worth of food imported. Why? 60% of available arable land worldwide, 60% of it is here on our continent. We have sunshine almost every day. We have water. We have people. By 2050, Africa will be about 2.5 billion people. Young, not the aging population. We're a young population. So if we did all those things, our economies would be strong. We won't have poverty. We'll do away with inequality. We'll send our kids to school, they'll have skills, they'll innovate, they are very innovative, given a chance. So we must, Steve Biko, when they were introducing me, they said I was in SASO, they are right. Steve Biko was our first president of SASO. And there's something that lived with me all my life up to now that he said. He said the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Until we decolonize our minds, we'll be crying, economy is not growing, this is not happening. But if we decolonize our minds and say, we're going to beneficiate our minerals here, and whoever wants the product will buy it from us, beneficiated. But what? And stop selling raw. And when those things come back, most of us can't afford them. So we must decolonize our minds, and we must take our destiny in our hands and not keep begging somebody there. One of the things I have never understood, why do we import chicken? Honestly. Our great-grandfathers and mothers would be shocked that we import chicken. So, decolonize your mind.
Wow. I nearly said viva to that, because indeed we need to decolonize our minds and a lot of things in our continent. Madam VC, please allow me to welcome our audience who are on YouTube, who have joined us from the beginning of this program. I've been informed that there are questions that are coming from the YouTube audience as well. So I would like to read just one of the question, and maybe you can assist answering that question so that our audience as well can be part of us. And this question is from Cindy Sontabati. And the question is, how can Kairos tradition rooted in South Africa's struggle for justice be reimagined as a global mandate for moral leadership, particularly in addressing interconnected crises of inequality? Ngiyathemba ukuthi izwakele, it's a mouthful. But maybe to try and summarize it in my own terms while they are putting it. I think the question is more of, we're waiting for that sacred intersection of the Kairos moment and the Chronos. I think, Prof, you spoke about Kairos and Chronos. We live in the scheduled time, in the current now. And when is this Kairos moment going to intersect with our Chronos time so that some of these injustices and struggles that we are talking about and challenges that we are engaging about are going to be addressed, particularly when we talk about this moral leadership in this time, be it in our continent or in our nation. I will leave it to your great minds to respond to that.
I was going to look to my right, but I saw the mic came to me. Thank you very much, colleagues. I believe that we are at a moment where truth it will be very sacred at all times. Not because of anything, but because of the challenges, but also the digital convergent lives that we lead, and how sometimes the information that we read may not be as good or as honest as it should. And therefore, I think it's a very important area, even as we form students as citizens, to be able to do so. But I thought on this question of the intersections and the global movement, I think Dr. Nkosazana is telling the truth. Because we have accepted the dominant economic policy or position of neoliberalism, which privatizes everything, which promotes profiting on everything, which sees relationships as transactional encounters. I think this idea of decolonizing our mind also is an invitation on how we create policies on the economy, on our relationships, on the natural and biotic resources that are endowed for our environments, but also from the world. And maybe to use this as an invitation for shared resources to humanize. I've always thought the academic from South America who wrote The Pedagogy of the Poor, Paulo Freire, says something very profound about this notion of decolonization without using the language of decolonization. When he reminds us about how the poor must extricate themselves from poverty and how organic intellectuals must be partners in the transformation journey. He says the poor themselves cannot draft their agenda for transformation on themselves. because their aspirations sometimes are to mimic those who are predators in the economy, and not necessarily to create a counterculture or a counter movement that's humanized through the economy. And therefore it means, even as we imagine these alternative ways of economy, of shared resources, of policies and decisions that should be undertaken, we must also try to do so in ways that do not mimic the very violent architectures, whether financial, economy, or other, that we are contending with, even as we do in the present. Because as Nkosazana says, we must beneficiate. We know that once you start doing that, you might be attacked by those with hegemonic military power. And to do so, you must have partners that you can be in solidarity with. And I think the example of United Arab Emirates is a good example of how, and I'm saying it because, Ambassador, you're here, how the optimization of oil and the decisions that were taken to invest in education, in science, in technology, in enabling the citizens to get and acquire the knowledges that would build, engineer, support the dreams that they had for their future, is one example that we can draw for ourselves. To say, if we look for a few partners that truly believe in Africa and that Africans must have dignity, and build, not give them, but build in solidarity. Perhaps, Nkosazana, this beneficiation aspects, this reclaiming of our economies and our knowledge systems and our talents will make more meaning. Because we know when Uncle Bob Mugabe was raising the questions next door, you know, the pushback. So we know in terms of the political systems of our continent, we also know when South Africa was trying to, under her leadership, to make available antiretrovirals for people who were living with the HIV pandemic, profit became more important than the solution. You remember, the claims to intellectual property, the patent rights, we cannot make these medicines available, even distorted narratives around the food systems and others that Nkosazana and her predecessor were trying to talk about. So we in the universities, also create analysis that empower our leaders, whether at state level, at church level, in economic decisions, to also contrast some of these experiences to come up with the best alternatives to building our societies and to transforming our economies. And I think this is one area that we can work with so that we are not bonded our whole lives. Thank you.
Can I just add? You may. Okay. I had the fortune of living in Ethiopia for 4.5 years. And I was very impressed with how they do things. Maybe it's because they were never colonized. You see, in Ethiopia, when they are building a high-rise building, they don't buy steel for scaffolding. They use wooden scaffolding. Wood they have. So for the price of that high-rise, if you compare what we pay here, just the scaffoldings, the steel for scaffolding, would push their price very high. But because they use steel scaffolding, Nati, we must use it. The Ethiopians don't do that. They just use wooden scaffolding and build their high-rise buildings. The building stands and nobody gets injured during the construction. Secondly, as I say, I had the fortune of living there. When I was living there, that's when they were building their hydro dam for their electricity. They put out the thing for investors to come. Not a single investor came. If it was us, we would still be waiting for the investors. But they didn't wait. They said, okay, they started. And one of the ways, of course, their diaspora also contributed, but one of the ways they did was everyone who had an Ethiopian number would receive an SMS every day, maybe once, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a day. They send you an SMS, because when I was there, we were earning in dollars. Then they say, if you answer this SMS with this, you will be donating $1 to the dam. We donated because we understood. Ethiopians were donating every day through those SMSs. Now the dam is there. Now they have electricity galore. Now they are going to surpass a lot of us because electricity is the lifeline for industrialization. Now they have. So I'm just saying they still eat with their hands. Then they haven't gone to steel to eat with steel. They're still eating with their hands. And the food is much nicer when you eat it with your hands.
Thank you very much, Mama.
And they also opened a women's, there's a women got together, opened a women's bank, right? Here we cry because women and youth find it difficult to get access to finance. But they said, okay, we'll create a bank. And most of their banks are owned by them. They are not, you don't find many international banks there. And yes, they were poor, but you can see, if you go there now, when I went there, when I go there every year, I see improvements. So the mind has it all. With us, we wait. If we want to build a dam and there are no investors, we'll wait 10 years waiting for investors. Thank you.
A take home. Let's take away the mind of the oppressor from us so that we can build our continent. We are blessed to have our excellencies from different embassies here. And I think it would be lovely, Mama, just to hear their comment or one question, as now we are saying, as our neighbors, we are in the same continent. Some, we share the same struggles. Some are experienced with the way things have done. And maybe we can get some of your comments and questions. But before maybe I allow you, I see Prof. Musoma's hand. He also wants to a question or a comment, which would be very much welcome. Can I ask a roving mic if Prof there, then after that, I will ask our excellencies if there's a question or a comment. It would be
Thank you so much, Program Director. And I want to appreciate the inputs made by our keynote speaker, including the VC. Well, I was part of this process of writing, researching, working on Kairos document many moons ago. When it was published in September, I was already in Princeton to pursue my studies, so hence my name is not there. The key issue, colleagues, is that you must first be convicted by the truth. You must first be convicted by the truth. Because you cannot want to liberate a people you do not love. You can't. We can talk as much as we want. Where lies our commitment is a key determinant to the freedom we seek to achieve. We must also understand that we are contending with forces. Hence, the Kairos document identify the systems. Must first deal with the systems. But that's church theology, it's state theology. These are systems. And the purpose of the systems is to bolster and ensure that the status quo continues. Unless you have a mind, analytical mind, to deal with the systems, you can sing as much as you want. You'll never change anything. So what we need to be orienting ourselves is, as we understand theory, how do we give effect to theorizing in a practical way to achieve the liberation of our people? When we talk about the liberation of the mind, what do we mean by that? We are saying stop using dead knowledge. Dead knowledge is the knowledge that does not help anyone. You pursue it, it's pie in the sky, it doesn't change anything. Let's make sure that the knowledge we acquire, it has got to tell us the end, the purpose we seek to achieve. It must be based on the love of our people. Do we have it? Do we have it? Thank you.
Yeah. The love of the people. Do we have it? I think that question to me, it's posing and asking me, do I have the love of the people, so that we can change certain things. Some of the knowledge that we need, it's within our people. We may not need to import it from anywhere else. Is there any question, maybe if from our excellencies? I want to just give them the opportunity first. Any question? I see a hand there at the back, but I wanted to check here first if there's one. I'm noting you, sir, because I've opened, I'm noting you as well. We'll start with you, Your Excellency.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the lecturing, and just I want to respond to Prof. Uprising UE with the technology and building capacity and also tolerance. But let me tell you what is the seed we put in 1971. That all the people in UAE look to each other. Number one, we keep them unity. We are Muslim. We love people to come to our country and to build a future in unity to people that meet with us and helping us to build such a beautiful country. We appointed certain countries that our male married from: India, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria. This is close to our community and close also to our culture. And this gives us, in 15 years from 1971, that is today, when I'm talking about living with 13 million, but our population as a citizen kissed 2 million. When you look to the infrastructure, which is a Prof said, in 1983, I came here with a group. We communicate with the government of South Africa at that time, and they help us in education, they help us in medical, They help us empowering our armed forces, and until the last missile carrying Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid to go to the space. Communication done by South Africa from Johannesburg. That means we thank South Africa for all that support. Today we are talking about AI, talking about sending building a station in the space with the Germany, French, and United States. We believe that in South Africa is leading Africa, no doubt. Infrastructure, educations, aviations, and so on. So I will be so careful when I give credit to South Africa, but South Africa is leading Africa. If South Africa focus more now on the youth, both male and female, and building up their airspace, including the airlines, the education. And also, I want to mention something, maybe it's here before. We have 124,000 South African women and men, which is also serving not as a labor, but in every sector of countries, including AI. That means today we appreciate it on behalf of my readership for all the support we get since 1971 until today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think there's a lot that we can learn from each other as we try to address some of the monsters that we are faced with in our communities. But at the end of the day, it rests with us as individuals. It starts with us as individuals to make that difference. I would like to take that hand at the back. Can I take, I see that our time, I will take the hand and then the ambassador of Cuba as well. I saw the hand. Then may you please allow me to wrap the session before 9 o'clock so that we can close. Apologies. Your Excellency.
Thank you very. Sorry.
You can.
Okay, sorry.
I was just not.
Yes, thank you very much. I think this has been a spectacular night to think about many interesting and determining issues of humankind in general. So I just wanted to make a quick comment about one point that I think is very crucial in advancement of humanity, and I think Africa is one of those places that at least Cuba has been able to give some support. It has to do with solidarity and helping next door, helping our fellow citizens. And that is something that today we've learned a lot about taking care of human beings, putting human beings in the center. And I think the principle of solidarity is something very important in this sense, and it has a lot to give. And for development of any of a country, to have a lending hand is also very important. So I think in the case of Cuba, for many years now, we've been raised with the principle of solidarity as one of our main goals in life. That's what I just wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can I just allow that one last question from the gentleman at the back? He's been raising his hand. Then after that, unfortunately, I'll have to close this session of Q&A. Then I will call upon my COD to do a vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dr. Zenon Ndaisenga. When I came, there was no plan also that I was going to ask a question, but from what Dr. Zuma said, I was like, no, let me make a comment. It's not going to be a question. I will do a comment on two things. She said, Africans who lives in South Africa. And when Africans visit South Africa, they are called foreigners. And when other visitors from other continents, they are called the tourists. So I will combine the two, and using my experience here in South Africa to explain what may be called free movement of Africans. I'm a refugee in South Africa from 2012. Yeah, almost now, maybe 15 years. I did all my undergrad here in South Africa, especially here at UNISA from 2014 to 2021, from undergrad to master's. Then I shifted to the University of Wits University from 2022 to 2025, and I completed my PhD on the recorded time. So, but what I want to say is, especially from my honors to PhD, I was doing research, and my research most of the time focused on Frantz Fanon and on the concept of decolonization. And I'm very interested on what we call genuine decolonization, because there is what we call false or pseudo decolonization, and that's what we have in most of African countries. So the issue that I want to say, or maybe a comment, is for all those years, I haven't been allowed to go outside of South Africa. So for me, it's like I'm a prisoner within South Africa. And I think there were supposed to be some exceptions, to be like, no, someone who is in academia, let us give him a paper so that he can be able to travel to the conferences. I have been invited to many conferences outside of South Africa, hence I'm even a French speaker, other French countries, but I was not able to go. So those are some of the things that hurt us, because I know most of South African leaders, especially those who fought for apartheid, they used passport that they were given in Tanzania and other countries. But for us now, it looks like, yeah. But anyway, let's try to assist each other. Let's try to neutralize the concept of xenophobia, which is here just to divide us, why we're supposed to be united. Because you also raised the issue of continental unity. The continental unity cannot be realized when we still block our other talents to go out and to come back. So I'm finishing on this point of collaboration and the promotion of our own languages. So my mother tongue, which is Kirundi, when I say Amazi, in South Africa also, most of the languages is Zulu and whatever, I found like almost the same, Amazi, water. So when I say Hejuru, which is Pezulu, is up. Inyon, Hejuru, Pezulu.
We'll end on that note.
Yes, I'm ending. Inyoni is still a bird. So we are one. There is no need that we're supposed to continue disagreeing ourselves while we're supposed to integrate within our continent. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much for that comment. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to close this session. usafuna ukuphendula futhi. Over to you, ma'am.
No, I just want to comment first on Cuba. I think we can learn a lot from Cuba. They've been under blockade since time immemorial. But one of the things they do is to concentrate on investing on the people. They invest in their people. Education, health, especially, I'll mention those two because there's no time. Education and health. That's why they're still standing. And they don't end there. They educate our kids. Not only in South Africa, across Africa, there are lots of Cuban-trained doctors and engineers. And when they wanted to close the university, the medical school in Mthatha, at Mthatha University, Transkei University, they wanted to close when I was Minister of Health. They were saying they don't have enough professors who want to go and work there. Because they wanted to take that medical school to Port Elizabeth. So I said to the dean then, come, let's go to Cuba. We went to Cuba. Cuba gave us 25 professors to go and teach there. So I'm just saying we can learn a lot from Cuba. And my brother there, let's talk.
Asikhulume. Let's talk. Thank you very much. Madam VC, please allow me that we close the session of today. But I would like to call upon Professor Lipaga, who is the chair of the Department of Philosophy, Practical and Systematic Theology, to come and do a vote of thanks for us. Then after, we'll give a directive as to how we dissolve this gathering.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mahlangu. I'm just going to take a minute. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this public lecture that we host annually. This is the third one that we do together with the Fohloza Foundation and the department. I would particularly like to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Dlamini Zuma, for a thought-provoking address on the Kairos document and theology. The speaker reminded us about the history of the theological term Kairos as used by Paul Tillich and later used by South African theologians who were confronted by the Kairos movement, which challenged the church on something that you have mentioned, Dr. Zuma, on neutrality. And the challenge then was that the church could no longer afford to be neutral or allow neutrality to be the order of the day. I was reminded of Revelation 3, verse 16, in which Jesus called out the church of Laodicea, when he said, "So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth." Jesus here was calling out the church of Laodicea for their lukewarmness. And the reason for their lukewarmness was because captains of industries were members of a church in Laodicea. So the church decided to be neither hot nor cold for the sake of survival. Jesus understood that those who call themselves
his or followers for purposes of surviving or to be squeezed in will find himself in a situation of neutrality or lukewarmness, or as Boussac and Paul de Young put it, in the situation of political pietism and Christian quietism. By this, Boussac and Paul de Young, they say political pietism is an activist approach that co-opts religious language and ideals only for purposes of serving political purposes, but do not address issues of genuine injustice. And in terms of Christian quietism, Boussac and de Young says, Christians who know better and who know that people are utilizing languages that sounds like the truth, but it's not the truth. They keep quiet because they want to survive. And as such, become neutral. So perhaps, Dr. Zuma, this is a challenge that the Kairos is bringing to us. Neutrality cannot be the order of the day. Thank you very much. As I end, as a token of appreciation from our college and the University of South Africa, can I request the VC, the Dean, and the school director and the chair of the Foreclosure Foundation to come so that we give you a token of appreciation. It's nothing much. It's just a token of appreciation. Arena Gauta, Arena Silver. I don't know, maybe we should come in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, sorry, colleagues. Can we have colleagues, our diplomatic colleagues in ambassadors, can we take a photo here? Myself. Okay. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that word of vote of thanks. I think after you've said and mentioned the church, I felt like calling an altar call to say we need to repent for being allowed to be spewed out. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our gathering. I need to apologize for keeping you for this long, but thank you so much for being with us until this time. I would request that we allow our dignitaries to be the ones who are leaving first. They will escort you. Then as they are leaving with our ambassadors, you can join them. They will escort you. They know where to take you. Then after all of us who are here, please don't rush and go. I know it's very late, but we have some goodies out there that have been requested that if you go, those goodies will just be there without anyone grabbing them. They are easy to grab, so you can grab a goodie. You'll see what is outside. We've filled your mind. Now you can fill your tummy as well with the goodies. So they should be okay. So I'm requesting that before you leave, just grab them. We have ladies who are there to help you. Let's allow our dignitaries to be walked out, then we can join them. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful